So now I think we are back on track. Can you see my slides? I'm trying to share those with you, sorry, all of you. Max, can you give me feedback?
We can see.
Ah, very good, great. So, well, welcome to this session, the impact of leadership and emotional intelligence competencies to manage coronaviruses in this corona crisis, actually, in this crisis of the world. And I welcome a colleague of mine, Professor Dr. Mano. I'm honored to work with him. We have started to do some courses, but I think before we start, if you can put for a while as we are doing our lecture, your Zoom probably in mute, or maybe I can do it from here. And then when we come to the sessions of questions and answers, of course, then I can, because we hear some noise and sometimes it disturbs, just let me see if I can hear. Maybe you can do it yourself. That would be very good. And now we don't hear noise. Yeah, that's very good. And then we are, thank you very much. So I can see that everybody actually did it. And at the end, of course, we will take questions, or even as we talk, actually, you can interrupt us, and then you can ask questions. Thank you. Now we don't hear any. We still hear something, I think. I think here I have to do this. Yeah. Okay, we got it. Isabel. Yeah. Sorry, I have just for a while, to mute microphones of yours because then, as I informed you written, we're gonna record this session and we're gonna share with the others actually, that everybody will profit of it. Yeah. So I kindly ask you to mute your microphone for a while. But yeah, so I think now it's okay. Okay. Great. So yeah, welcome again. As I said, Max and me, we wanted to share something with the world, and we know that we are in a great challenge now. I mean, the healthcare is in a great challenge, and the economy as well, and politics as well. And the aim of Max and mine is actually to give some insights regarding the research in leadership. How can we manage those crises? Just a short introduction. As you know, Max is professor and doctor in oncology. I come from medical education, and I had opportunities to supervise Max during his Master of Advanced Studies in Medical Leadership, and he's one of the leaders worldwide in medical education regarding leadership. And afterwards, we made some plans actually to offer to the world some courses and some workshops and so on regarding leadership competencies and emotional intelligence, decision making, and so on. I am going to tell you something about the leadership of Academy of Leadership Sciences in Switzerland, which I'm the director of this Academy of Leadership Sciences Switzerland here. We have about 50 people worldwide, professors and faculty who work together. And we want actually to make outstanding leaders. So why did I come to this idea to establish Academy of Leadership Sciences Switzerland? Not only myself, but with a lot of people worldwide, of course. I have done my PhD in medical education, investigating leadership competencies in medical education and health professions. I will come a bit later to that. But as I have finished that study, so I was thinking then, and professors of mine as well, so what we do with that. And so we have decided to establish Academy of Leadership Sciences Switzerland. So we are based in World Trade Center, Zurich. It is about 5 minutes drive from Zurich Airport. And Max knows, he has visited Academy of Leadership Sciences Switzerland. So as I said, we are based at World Trade Center, Zurich. Our programs are mostly online actually, but we have opportunities and possibilities to meet face-to-face with students as well when we do some workshops on seminars and so on. So we cover, as you can see, many domains actually, but we are very based in academics, such as Masters of Advanced Studies, Certificates of Advanced Studies, Diploma of Advanced Studies, Master of Sciences, but together with some universities, we do offer as well PhD and doctorate in leadership and advanced studies. We are very much focused in research as well, and we encourage all of our students to publish, and Max himself, he has done a great study he will share with us. And together with Max and some other, of course, colleagues, faculty at Academy of Leadership Sciences Switzerland, we do a lot of research together, and so with this aim actually that the world profits. A part of that, we are very much engaged in advising, consulting, and coaching for individuals, but for companies as well and institutes. And of course, we do this one-to-one or one to the company or to the organization. And we cover all of those domains, leadership in business and administration, included specializations. We do then leadership in higher education, leadership in politics, and we know now when we talk about the situation, we know that the current situation, the politicians, they weren't prepared either. And of course, we have leadership in healthcare. This is our main domain, and absolutely today as well, of course. And we have leadership in law. So all of those parts, actually, they were missing, you know, as a science in itself, let's say. There were a lot of programs in management, but we saw the gap, you know, regarding leadership. And leadership, it differentiates actually from management. So this was, and it's still our aim. We function since 2014, so almost 6 years ago, excuse me. And we have done many of collaborations with many universities and institutes worldwide. Only a couple of them here, but we have some more. And as I say, we make a very good experience trying to expand this knowledge worldwide, working with marvelous people, very competent people like now colleague of mine, Max, and the others. And we have established here, it's just a short introduction, and then we will go to the science. We have established this Center of Excellence here in Zurich, but we have in Dubai as well at Prague University. We collaborate very close with them. It is one center of dentistry over there, which we have established this Center of Excellence, and some programs in medicine and in leadership in medicine and dentistry as well. This is an inauguration which we have done over there. And we do, as I mentioned before, many workshops and trainings worldwide. Just a couple of actually memories here. So this was Department of actually of Health Ministry of part of Emirates over there. And so we have done many MOUs, as I said, only some memories here. And so I'm gonna come now to the study which have done. So we can hear some. May I kindly ask to mute your microphones, please? I know you have to communicate, and just to do. Maybe I can do it for you. Sorry about that. Just that we don't get. I think here I have to do it. I cannot even mute this. But may I kindly ask again to mute your telephones, because then it disturbs us. Thank you very much. So we, as I mentioned before, actually in my study I have investigated. It was a big study, and I've investigated. This was my PhD thesis dissertation, by the way. I've investigated those 6 countries, 3 German-speaking countries, such as Switzerland, Germany, Austria, USA, Canada, and UK. And it was a really very big study. Of course, randomized. I have checked the institutions and you know, so deans of universities and chiefs of departments of different kind of everything. It was, of course, randomized. We have done two approaches. It was a qualitative approach, which we have done with a group, you know, focus group, and then we made one actually questionnaire, which we have then distributed to this countries that I mentioned above. And just to make it short, we came with this model of 5 competency domains. Of course, we have done a very rigid, you know, methodology of study and research. I'm not going to lose a lot of time in that, but it was, you know, we have the factor analysis, and factor analysis brought those 5 factors actually, which you can see. It was social responsibility at the very top. Then it came innovation, it came self-management, task management, and justice orientation. So we have taken one model from industry, actually from business, and so it was new to us that this justice orientation, it came as a new domain in this factor analysis. And within those 5 domains, there are 63 competencies incorporated, which really can be learned, you know, so leadership competencies, which really everybody of us can learn. And we have managed a part of that study to have published in British Medical Journal, and not to exaggerate or overestimate, but it was really one of the biggest, I mean, of the first studies, let's say, you know, in those Western culture in medical education till that time, that had such a rigid methodology of study. And as you can see, we have published a part of it. It's myself with some of my ex-professors from Canada. And so we have then actually tried, or you know, people do a lot of citation of this model. And fortunately, I can say I'm very glad that in many cultures had been tested and replicated. And Professor Mano, Max Mano, he did that in the context of South America, which it was a great study, and he will share with us that soon. And so just some short, actually, I didn't want, you know, to, I will leave that for Max. He will explicitly then share with us his study, of course, but just as I mentioned before, this study of mine incorporates those models, those 5 domains, as you can see: social responsibility, we have innovation, self-management, task management, and justice orientation. And of course, we have done then between group differences, you know, female and male, and between German-speaking and English-speaking countries. And there wasn't much difference, actually. We have a little bit between female and male. It was interesting that English-speaking part, the female, they rated a little bit higher social responsibility and innovation as did German-speaking females, let's say. And we have some differences, as you can see, regarding medical doctors and non-medical doctors, because we have there, as I said with you, you know, we have people from medical education, which they weren't medical doctors, or we have people from other health professions, such as nurses or physiotherapists. And that was slightly different, as you could see. But to generalize this really for everybody, it was very high. Those competencies were very high rated. And but there were some few differences, as you can see. For example, social responsibility and innovation, it was a little bit more, I mean, higher rated, let's say, from non-medical doctors than other professions. And that we can interpret as well, you know, since medical doctors in Europe and in USA, let's say, have achieved, you know, one highest standards, let's say, and established themselves politically very high. The nurses, for example, they are still struggling, you know, to get more recognition, let's say, from the society and the healthcare politics. And maybe it can be that they search for more innovation, or, you know, social responsibility, that they are, this is an interpretation, that they are non-stop 24 hours on patient. It can simply be, you know, that might want to show a little bit more social responsibility. But this is statistically different. But as I say, you know, clinically there is no difference. So I just want this more slide, and I'm going to give then the word to a colleague of mine, Max. But um, since we are now in those crises, and we know that it's really very important, we search for leaders now to lead us, as I say, be it in healthcare, we weren't much prepared. Politicians, they were even less prepared than us to manage those crises. And we know, unfortunately, non-competent leadership, it is the biggest threat worldwide. I mean, we can say as a researchers of leadership domain, because, and especially now, I don't want to talk against politicians, but unfortunately now, some of them, they take even advantage, even though we have to do with life, threatening situations, and they try now to point and, to get some points, for the next elections and so on, and that's not a leadership that Max and I and the others who deal with the research of leadership actually advises. So we even say that actually non-competent leaders, they are really the biggest threat for the human being, the biggest threat. And just a short thing here, so emotional intelligence, it is actually very good aligned with leadership, and you can never become a good leader without without having an high emotional intelligence. And I just wanted to say that we aligned that. It was a model of Goleman, emotional intelligence, and you can see that it aligns very good with our leadership competency model, actually, which holds my name here. And just, you need really very good self-awareness in order to have social responsibility or innovation or, justice orientation and so on. I'm not going to go in details because, as you can see, we are recording this and the whole world can have those slides as well. And we are delighted, Max and myself, and the others, of course, to share this knowledge with you. But of course, we are delighted when you ask questions, and we are delighted to help you wherever you are in any companies worldwide, because we have spent a lot of time investigating those competencies and learning about leadership, and we would like this to share with others, because of course it's a very, very important thing. So I'm not going to go further. I'm going to give the word to a colleague of mine, Max. Max, please, the floor is yours. I know it's far away. You are in Brazil. I'm in Switzerland here. Can you see the slides, Max? I have to hide this a little bit. Can you hear me, Max, and the rest? Yeah. Oh, yeah, I have to unmute you. Yes, or you did yourself. Yeah, thank you, Max.
I have to unmute myself. We are all learning how to use these tools.
Absolutely.
It's kind of very tricky. And yesterday we were looking with my wife a video of some situations that have been documented. People in conferences at home, they can be very funny. But apparently you have the option as the chair of the meeting. You can choose and mute people.
Yes.
You can mute people, and you can choose a co-chair who can help you to do that. So that's an option as well.
Absolutely.
But Fadil, I think you summarized the problem. We are now facing a big challenge, this health crisis, and what we have been seeing here in my country is really horrible, because we have leaders who have no idea what to do, and we have others who have some idea what to do. However, they are using the situation to boost their political power, you see, not to solve the situation. So that's really unbelievable. And I can see this is happening in many countries across the world. So it's what you call the leadership failure. Okay, that's true leadership failure. But well, I will go very quickly through the concepts, because we have discussed these basic concepts several times with my colleagues. Leadership is kind of complex to define. It appears to be very easy, but it's not. And I think the best definition has been proposed by Peter Nordhaus. He defines leadership as a process. So leadership is not a goal. You achieving a position, that's a goal. However, leadership is a process where the leader influences and motivates a group to achieve a common goal. It's a very simple and widely acceptable definition. And Nordhaus, in this definition, he rejects theories that define leadership as a set of interpersonal characteristics of traits. That doesn't make sense. Next, please.
Mhm.
So that's the question of traits. So traits, in the past, there was a tendency to apply a number of traits to leaders. They could be intelligence, self-confidence, determination, integrity, sociability. However, they were kind of treated as innate. So either you had it or you did or you didn't. So you could not acquire these skills. And in these models, emotional intelligence, which today we know is key, is extremely important in modern theories, was almost left behind. So that's a key element which was simply not addressed. Next, please. So then we had a period like that was in the 50s and 60s, where some researchers started to question this trait approach. This didn't make sense, that perhaps leadership was finally more dependent on technical skills and on learning as well, on studying. So Mandorf and Katz were kind of pioneers. Next, please. And finally, over the last few years, there were a number of approaches, which we call leadership theories. Anybody who is interested in studying formally leadership will have to look at each one of these theories. That's part of the learning. It's out of the scope of what I'm addressing today, but we do have a number of theories which can be very interesting. Next, please. Okay, so we have seen that we kind of moved from a trait-based approach to a skill-based approach, and that we can learn. Leadership can be taught, can be learned. Could you go to the next slide, Fadil, please?
Yes.
Straight to my presentation. So that's our study. I know that some of the people attending this call today are familiar with this study, and perhaps some of them contributed by filling the question. That's a study in which we sent a survey, electronic survey, to participants, to physicians from Latin America. And they are all from oncology area, because that's what I do, and some associated areas as well, such as surgery and so on. Next, please. Well, we already discussed that leadership is complex. However, it's extremely complex in the healthcare sector. Before this crisis, we were facing major challenges. And we wrote an article, me and yourself, Fadil, 2 years ago, addressing challenges in the healthcare sector in Latin America. And it was already tough. So from now on, it's going to be worse. What was already difficult, because we have a health crisis going on. One way out of that would be to invest in quality programs. But however, the implementation of quality programs also requires effective leadership. And finally, a key concept is that you, as a physician, as a brilliant physician or a researcher, that is no guarantee of success once you take a leadership position, because then you are required a set of skills that sometimes you have not acquired yet in your previous jobs. Next, please. So this is a kind of interesting table, which is in the article, in which I look at how many articles were published in Medline with the words training plus physician plus leadership. And as you can see, until the late 80s, we had sort of less than 10 articles per year. And then this started to grow, and then it started to grow exponentially, so that in the last few years, we are almost reaching 300 articles every year. So that shows the level of interest in educational programs in leadership for physicians and for healthcare professionals. Next, please. So our study is about leadership competence, so criteria for leadership competencies. And that's based on the fact that we have a wide variation on what type of leadership competencies are seen as important, depending on where the person comes from, her age, her gender, experience the area in which this person works. And there was a pioneer work, you mentioned that, by Professor Violetto, who was perhaps one of the pioneers. He to imagine these leadership competency models, and he feels that this should be taught in medical schools. And recently I learned this is being done in some modern medical schools. Students are being taught some notions of leadership skills, and this is happening in our country as well, only in some selected universities. So that comes from Professor Viola.
Yeah, he was, by the way, Max, just to let people know, maybe, I don't know if you know, he was my supervisor in PhD. I don't know if he talked about Violato was my, sorry that I disturbed you. I learned from him, you can see. He was my teacher. Sorry to disturb you.
He's great, you know, he collaborated in our work, and
he's together with us, absolutely, Sorry to disturb you, Mark. I just wanted the world to tell,
very good points. So he's a unique person. He's really somebody worth knowing, you know.
Yeah, absolutely.
Then we had your study, the survey, which you applied for healthcare professionals in leadership positions, but all these professionals were from North America and from Europe. Okay, next, please. So then we had this idea. So the issue, the problem, the research problem in this survey, in our survey, was that we lacked a cross-cultural validation of this survey. So we decided to apply in Latin America. Next, please. So that's our objectives, to apply this survey to Latin American physicians from the oncology community who had leadership positions. We aimed to compare with the results of your survey and to investigate interactions of factors from our population with these leadership competencies. Next, please. Next slide, please.
Next one, okay. Methodology you got? Further one, okay.
Yeah. So that's fine to go straight to methodology. And here you can see what was nice in this study is that we were able to recruit a number of institutions, those are official medical institutions from several countries who contributed. However, it was kind of tricky because each one has its internal rules of how they communicate with their members. For instance, for some of them, I was not able to send the emails directly myself. They had to send through their communication email. And that was a problem because I could not track the response. However, for LACOG, I was able to track the responses. They provided me the emails and allowed me to address the members directly. Next, please. So this is what we did. Over a month period, we sent 8,000 invitations and we collected 217 responses. And here you can see the response rate. You will see that's in the discussion as well. We were kind of criticized by some reviewers because we had a low response rate. However, we have to think of that we sent invitations to physicians who were members of the societies, and I required that they had leadership positions to fill in the survey. So I assume it's normal that less than 10% of the respondents took the survey, because if they had no leadership position, they were not supposed to take the survey. Next, please. Well, we can go very quickly here, Fadil, because that's only characteristics. I just would like to show that it's kind of very well balanced. It's very well represented by country, by medical specialty, and by years of experience as well. Next, please. So here, the results, that was one of the objectives, to compare with your results. And as you can see, the only statistically significant difference we found from your survey was in task management. That was only third in your survey, and in our survey that was first, as chosen by Latin American physicians. Next, please. Well, here we have the subgroup analysis, and I would just like to say that for most of them, we found differences, and some are very interesting. Only for private versus public, we found no difference, but that I will address in the discussion. That's the next slide, please.
Okay.
So that's the first study addressing the perception of Latin American physicians on the relative importance of leadership competencies. And to the best of my knowledge, one of the largest ever performed specifically in physicians. We sent close to 8,000 invitations, and the 217 responses we received were sufficient to perform all the analysis we planned. Next, please. We've seen that, well, Latin American leaders placed a higher value on task management. That was different from your survey, that was third in importance. And one interesting difference, however, that did not reach statistical significance was social responsibility. That was first in your survey.
Exactly.
However, we have to be careful because in your survey, there were only 40% of physicians. And in this survey, we had 100%.
Yeah.
And perhaps, well, you found some differences of non-physicians placing a higher value on social responsibility. So perhaps that makes sense. That's different in the population of the two surveys. Next, please. Well, I investigated private versus public. Well, I honestly, should I do the survey again, perhaps I would not inquire public versus private, because I realized those are the same people. It's very common in Latin America that people have double positions. They have one public position, which is usually an academic position, and they have a private practice position. So they are the same people. Probably that's why we did not find any difference.
Okay.
We found differences in terms of clinical oncologists. They placed more higher value on social responsibility. I suppose that's because we as clinical oncologists, we have a very close contact with the patients. So the emotional involvement is huge. And so we have an understanding of the devastating impact of cancer on patients and families, when sometimes other specialists, they are more focused on technical issues like the surgery or the radiation, the radiotherapy machine, you know. So perhaps that's only speculation. So next, please. That's perhaps among the most interesting finding. The most senior leaders, they placed a higher value on task management and leading other competencies. And that was very consistent, regardless of the definition of seniority, age, time of oncology, and so on. That was very consistent. And I suppose because they represent a set of very complex and critically important skills that you only learn with seniority. So you do need a few years before you fully realize the importance. Next. Women, I have to say, women were underrepresented in this survey. I'm not sure if this is because we have a higher representation of non-physicians in your survey, or perhaps that's even worse, that women are underrepresented in our survey. Would you mind try and mute the people who are listening for you, please?
Yes, please. May I ask you to mute yourself? That who is phoning there? I thought, sorry, Max. Yeah, because then it disturbs. Just for a while.
Just one back, please. One slide.
Yes, I'll go back. Sorry, just a second. This one, Max. One more back.
So these are the
emails. Yeah, you were here. Sorry about that.
So I will talk about women. And interesting, Fadil, in these prizes, the major leaders who dealt well with the situation were women.
Wow.
Oh, well, yes, women from Germany, from New Zealand, they were brilliant in in dealing with the crisis. So the issue here is whether women are underrepresented in leadership positions in Latin America. I strongly suspect they are, okay? And that has been documented. We have literature showing that in the medical practice, women are still underrepresented in leadership positions.
In leadership, yeah.
And I found that they placed a higher value on innovation competencies. The first time I saw that, I felt it didn't make sense. I would never find an explanation, but potentially there is an explanation. We have some literature showing that women appear to be very skilled in innovation competencies. That has been shown in many business surveys as well, and this appeared in our study as well. Next, please. So that's considerations on the response rate. I already addressed that, so I think you can move to the next slide. And this, I don't need to take your time. So this is in the article and in the presentation, all the strengths and limitations of our article. I think if should I be able to apply this questionnaire again, I would change it a little bit. The way we do, as with any research, we learn with our errors and mistakes, and we can improve the process. Next, please. So in conclusion, we documented these differences. There is a cultural variation in the evaluation of a set of specific medical leadership competencies as judged by European and North American leaders versus Latin American leaders. We performed many subgroup analyses which disclosed very interesting results, and they show that we also have variations within our population on how people value leadership competencies as well. And so why this study is important, because once we start to develop leadership training programs in the region, we could kind of, change a little bit how we apply this program. Perhaps regionally, people will have unique needs. And finally, I wish I could see the survey applied to other cultures as well. Perhaps in Asia, maybe we would be able to talk about that, if there is any chance that this survey could be applied to other countries.
Absolutely.
So just to analyze, the next slide is to show that we published the article. It's really available. It's downloadable from this ASCO journal. So you have the full data in case you have any questions. That's it for me.
Well, thank you very much, Max, for presenting us and the world you studied. I was honored, to sit near than the others. And I think now we are open, of course, for questions. And please, any of you, try to challenge Max and me. And what we know, we will, of course, share with you. When we don't know, we say that we don't know and we search for further.
Fadil, while people are thinking about their questions, okay, you go through your presentation. Could you tell us if this survey is being performed in other world cultures as well?
Yes, Max, it has been now. The survey, I mean, that mine which you have replicated there, it has been in other countries as well. It has been in Pakistan, in Iran. It has been in context of Asia, by the way, as well. Right. Somebody did from, I don't know where was he or she from, I don't have in my mind now, but they did that as well, yeah. And right. I'm glad, Max, that people, just as you mentioned in your presentation, and you brought us even data actually of those articles, that now, so this, let's say, emphasizing in leadership, fortunately, it is raising, and that's a good thing, even, in healthcare and medical education. That's promising,
Great. So now you continue with your slides, okay?
No, I wanted, Max, maybe somebody would like to have some questions, because let's open, and then I have 2 or 3 just actually to justify that, what you said, how important it's emotional intelligence with leadership. But let's give a session question and answers. Maybe somebody would like to ask something. As you could see,
should anybody be willing to send the questions by chat, I can translate, or even ask in Portuguese, I can translate the questions.
Max, Felipe.
Yes.
Yes, go ahead, please.
Hi, Dr. Fadil. I will ask in Portuguese and Max translate.
No problem. Thank you, Felipe. Thank you.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you very much.
Please.
Mais presentation.
Thank you very
Max,
much.
eu queria opinião. Thank you. Eu queria ouvir a opinião dele, Max, um pouco assim, a gente tem observado nesse período aqui da Covid, né? Todo esse conflito entre a OMS, né, a Organização Mundial da Saúde, e basicamente os Estados Unidos, né? E como é que análise sobre liderança que ele faria, especificamente sobre o presidente da OMS, né? E nessa condução, acho que é uma coisa interessante.
Well, Fadil, that's a very relevant question. By the way, guys, you have to be careful because Fadil is skilled in many languages and he could kind of understand your question.
Unfortunately, only the Portuguese, it's a lovely language, but I couldn't understand, sorry.
But Fadil, the question is a very good one, and it's for you. Felipe was addressing all the conflicts we are witnessing between the WHO, World Health Organization, policies and recommendations, and some presidents, especially from the United States, you know. So how do you see this crisis? So does that make sense? Is that political use of the situation? So where is the leadership failure in this case?
Yeah, well, it is really, Max, if I can go now, it is here, I think. Just as you said, it's an emotional intelligence, and you mentioned very good before that emotional intelligence, it is really the biggest part of leadership. And just as you mentioned, as Max mentioned before, the good thing is it is that can be learned, you know. But the problem is, Max and Philip, to your question and to all of us, that sometimes people, unless they reflect, actually, you know, they just don't seem to learn, you know. So that's why it's very important that we as the leaders get feedback. But the problem is, Philip, to your question, and Max, you translated it, is that we have a data that especially CEOs or people in the biggest position, or presidents or prime ministers, they almost never ask for feedback. And they need the most, by the way, you know. And the problem is now, I just want to, because I follow that, you see, we have a part of politician part as well there. Unfortunately, many of leaders worldwide, included the president of USA now, it is they go to this power, let's say, by even spreading fear, you know, spreading fear. And we know that, I mean, our brain, I don't want to go too much in anatomy, physiology, you know that as well, but most of part of the brain actually has to do with emotions, you know. And we know that this amygdala, for example, it hasn't been reformed at all during the evolution, you know. It sends us anyway a lot of impulses really to have unnecessarily fear, you know, in general. And now, additionally, if we do spread fear additionally, even unconsciously, it makes a lot of troubles. And some politicians, unfortunately, worldwide, they do then spread on purpose fear, you know, to get elected. And that is the biggest problem, you know. And that's why even in those crises, Max, they failed very much. I can tell you, in each country, they failed very much. Sometimes ignoring, you know, the specialists, taking, you know, you come from oncology, I come from medical education, we might not be the right people, let's say, you know, now for infectiology or microbiology, they should have taken them. But of course, they could ask you for leadership, and myself and the others, you know, who have a clue, and help them in those crises as well. So to summarize that, it's a very, very big problem. And just, I say even sometimes that non-competent leaders, they are at least 10,000 times more dangerous than this virus, which we are focusing now, which we are facing now, Philip, absolutely. And this is really, we have to now, Max mentioned before, so we had, even before, we have problems with with healthcare, a lot of problems. Now, just as you mentioned, we will have even more. What we will have in economy, we will have in politics, and so on. And really, it is time that they get some insights and want to learn, because we can really teach them, we can learn them, because by doing that, just this, if you allow me, Max, for a while, because it's a very good question. If they spread fear, look what will happen. This amygdala will get even more actually activated, and it hijacks the whole brain. And exactly at this part, we need the innovation, as Max mentioned before. And in order now, from the brain physiology, in order that we are innovative, we have to calm down, actually. So we have, to have less fear. And if they spread more fear, look what happens. We will be angry, we will have fear, and even we can cause depression. We can get depression, sorry. They can cause depression and we can get it. And, physiologically, it is, if we see, because due to our mirror neurons, we know that their behavior can affect us a lot, actually. So we know that we have this, it is, I have it somewhere, certain, not here, but if we are permanent in stress, we know that a lot of cortisol will get produced, a lot of adrenaline, and even the immune system will decrease, actually, we know that. But just to come here, if we have a good leaders, it's physiologically those impulses from amygdala to the prefrontal cortex, which it is actually in charge for the rationality, then it's interesting, they will get steered then on the left side if we have a very competent leaders, because they will come down. And it's interesting that neurotransmitters will focus more on the left side, and we are in better moods, the self-confidence increase, and we are in flow. And the good thing is we need now, actually, when the brain, it is in the low electrical function, we can say, of those, synapses, then we are more able to get some more insights and to get more innovative. And if we are permanent under this pressure, this amygdala hijacking, really it's very, very difficult to make one right decision. So, Philip, I hope I could explain a little bit, but we could talk 2 days, I believe, all of us. And I hope that they will listen, maybe some of them advisors to this lecture. It would be good. And by the way, Max and me, we are here to advise, people worldwide from medical sector and healthcare, but beyond that as well, because leadership is leadership. Max mentioned very good, so there are similarities.
Yeah, that's interesting, your comments about the fear.
Yeah.
I think we've been over the last 10 years, perhaps.
Yeah.
The way people do politics in this country is to spread fear. So they spread fear, okay, threat. They have to create a permanent threat.
Yeah.
And people are in permanent fear. But and this is what this causes. It starts to divide the society. Either you take one side or the other.
Yeah.
So, and there is always an enemy. That's the way they do politics. And as I can see, there is in other countries, this is happening as well.
It's really worldwide. I can assure you, Max, even in Switzerland, which is, let's say, so the quietest, let's say, in, country on the world, because we don't have very much power. Our presidents, they don't have power. They are only 1 year, in power. And there are 7 of them, which, they have really to talk with each other. And so it's not a lot of power. But still, even here, I can tell you that absolutely, as you said, they try, some of them, some populists, for example, to make a lot of fears, which they say, the others, for example, migrants, they are fault when it doesn't work something good, and this is the stupidness things. And I believe we as a nation, as a human being, we have really to reflect that people don't manipulate us, because it's not good. It's not good. Look what happens, Max, it comes to depression, and most of you are medical doctors here, I believe, and we know that depression, it is a very bad illness. In Switzerland, it is the safest country in the world, and with a very high economic level and so on. And we have youth people who are very depressive. It is, and this is it, spreading fear, unnecessary fear. But the good thing is, Max, and you know that better than me, now we focus very much in this neuro leadership, you know, and nowadays really we have a lot of data which they tell us, you know, so look, you bring under computer tomography, you can stimulate something and you see. Maybe just that to share with, and you have to tell me it's enough, but we can see this study, for example, which it was in UCLA, you know, at University of California in Los Angeles, that Eisenberger, she has brought this study a couple of years ago, and it was retested, so that the social pain, it is just the same as a biological, physical pain, you know. And sometimes we are not very much aware, I think, in each domain, in healthcare or, you know, business or in politics anyway, are not so. And you see what happened, you know, so excluding somebody from the group or interfering or whatever. So it is really... Excuse me?
Eu vou dar uma olhada agora nos e-mails, tá bom? Em relação às cotações que você me passou. E me tira uma dúvida também. Minha namorada, minha noiva, ela tem...
Wait, I'm sorry, Fernando.
O MEI, aquele microempreendedor individual.
Like to mute people again,
com o MEI, ela consegue, o MEI é só ela, né? Microempreendedor individual, obviamente. Ela consegue fazer o plano dela pelo MEI, porque aí ela já tem tudo prontinho.
Sorry, that's interference. It's not a question coming
pelo MEI daria para fazer como se fosse uma vida só. Ela independente.
Probably Fernando Tovo.
It's no problem. Even comments, Max, you and me, we accept, of course, critics as well. And if somebody disagrees, we will try what research knows, you know, to justify. If we don't know and research doesn't know, we always accept. So no problem at all. Please just.
Fadil, can I ask you a question?
Please.
You addressed emotional intelligence, and that's a subject I do appreciate. Extremely important for everybody. So,
absolutely.
Can people be trained in emotional intelligence, and if so, how they could do that?
Yes. Yes, Max, it is. And the good thing is the older we are, the more emotional intelligent we become. You know, you said even in your study that was, you know, experiences and so on. But yeah, it can be taught, you know. And nowadays, for example, the Center of Emotional Intelligence at Yale University are doing a really great job, starting even from kids. I mean, because we know that the prefrontal cortex, you know, it's not very mature. Let's say, you know, there are differences in literature from 20 till 25. Let's say it is then mature. You know, that's why teenagers, they do a lot of silly things, which, you know, information, I mean, they don't have some inhibitors to come to the amygdala, for example, and so on. But yeah, to your question, Max, yeah, there are three simple things, actually. The first is recognizing emotions. You know, that to recognize them, that means actually I have to see this, recognize the symptoms and signs of that. What happened when somebody, let's say, makes me angry? You know, so what happened with my body? What happened with my voice? Do I get louder? What happened with my knee? Do they shake? What happened with my, you know, heart rate and whatever? So recognize it, because symptoms are different, since we are different, of course. And some of us, they have a bit more resiliency against the stress, because, you know, the bad emotions, let's say, they are always associated with fear and with stress. The second, Max, it is labeling. You know, so we have to learn to name them, give them a name. And I can tell you, you told me, I know a couple of languages just as you as well. I want compliments to give back. And but I know in all of those languages that I know, we are lacking on naming those emotions. So we mix sometimes. For example, we mix, you know, so let's say jealousy with something else, you know, and the more precise we can label them, the better we can make a diagnosis of that, actually, what is that, you know. And the third thing is actually stop. Just as in traffic light, you know, you have to stop and choose the best option to react in that situation. I mean, sometimes, you know, in literature you find that, and I practice that as well, you know, taking a deep breath, sometimes maybe even leaving the room, because, you know, especially when they occur, those bad emotions, let's say, and they are there, you know, we cannot just ignore them. So sometimes it's better even maybe you leave the room if it is possible, and you say we carry on after 1 hour or two, because this I believe you, this is a biology. You see what happened. About 50 millions of bits, they come in 200ths of a second, through our sensation to the emotional part. Most of it is emotional part of the brain here, you see. And the problem is, until it goes biologically, physiologically, this information to the prefrontal cortex, which it has, very, very small capacity actually to get this information. You see, compare this 50 to 100 bits and very slowly to compare with this. So, with other words, Max, if you give physiologically a bit more time, the brain, that those information go in prefrontal cortex, and then it brings some inhibiting neurotransmitters, to calm down amygdala, we can most likely control them a little bit better. Okay. And sometimes really we say sleep one night and then tomorrow the world it looks better, but of course we are not patient that, and sometimes in milliseconds we have to decide, but it can be learned, yeah.
As far as I remember, you have a short course, an 8-week short course of emotional intelligence.
Yes, we do. We do, Max, yes. We do courses, we have those similar ones, which everything can be taken online, actually. There are 8 weeks courses, which you can take online, only that, or you can take it as a part of Master of Advanced Studies. And additionally to that, we are offering now as well crash courses as well, which they have 8 weeks length, 1 lecture per week, which we use, such a tool here. And yeah, things are coming good actually. And we are offering, I just want to take opportunity with Max, many opportunities now actually to train short courses, workshops, and individual, advising and coaching as well.
Great.
Any other questions? Probably from, I know, so we are more than 1 hour, I think, here, but we are in flow and you want to give as much as possible. So you tell me, and then I can, if there are any questions from our colleagues now, please don't hesitate. Questions, I say, as a scientist of, let's say, medical education, they are always equivalent to gold because it makes us reflect. There are no stupid questions, which sometimes we used to hear from our teachers or professors. I always say there are.
Yeah. Well, that's quite interesting. Maybe I also can provide your email address to people who attended here. Many I know, and so they can have doubts and check for your courses and teachings. But I'm really very much interested in emotional intelligence. That was a full 2 months teaching when I took the course, and I think it's unbelievable, and it's something you have to revisit, because sometimes you start forgetting some of the basic concepts, and you have to go back and look again.
Yeah, it's very nice to hear from you, Max, as one of the top leaders worldwide in our domain. But it's interesting, many of them I had opportunity for almost 10 years to teach, because I do teach in PhD program as well, in the program of Professor Violato. And sometimes really, professors of medicine like yourself and the others, they say, hey, really, it is incredible, so I can make one quote of somebody, hey, colleague of mine, Professor Çitaku, you have changed my life. I don't want to exaggerate, not me, but, the emotional intelligence, as you said. Because the problem is, I will just explain, Mark, what you said, that the problem is all schools, we are all academics and achieved a lot in academia and so on. They were telling us to, do this, do this, learn. We learned a lot, But to be honest, until I started myself to investigate leadership competences, and then I came to emotional intelligence, I never heard about that, I have to admit, That never heard about that because nobody talked about that, And that is incredible. And now we have so many insights due to the, development of computer, technology in medicine as well, scans and so on. And just to summarize that, what you said, if you see physiologically, so we have the part of emotions that is involved in us in decision making in everyday life, everywhere in medicine, in oncology, wherever we are, it is, just as a Milky Way, you see. And the part of this rationality, as we call it, very tiny thing, couple of millimeters there, it is really, so as one chair, it's as 1 meter square or something like that. It's really very, very small. And just to give an example, we know that the tough things are very difficult, to learn straight away, because we have a lot of effort of this prefrontal cortex. And the neuroscientists, they say that maximum we can about 6 hours a week. It is incredible, be very active with this part of prefrontal cortex. And the rest of it, it goes everything in emotion, and emotions are here. We cannot amputate. It is just amputating one arm, you cannot, they are there. But the question is, as Max asked, actually, how can we control that? And here we have to focus very much, I think.
Well, I suspect in my profession, grasping the knowledge in emotional intelligence is probably responsible for surely more than 50% of your career success. I'm almost sure.
Absolutely, and we have data to that, Max, that those outstanding leaders, it's very good what you brought, actually, because let's take an example, in medicine, each of you had a very high IQ. Actually, worldwide, it's very difficult to get registered in one medical school. I know that. So there is all people are very smart. Afterwards, when you have finished that, then you see, who is outstanding, and that will help him emotional intelligence. Because those grade A or B, there which he was or she working, hard and learning, will not help anymore, because this is then interaction, Max, how you interact with your subordinates, how you interact with your patients, with family members, with nurses, and so on. And here we see really outstanding leaders then, those who have developed emotional intelligence. And here there is science as well, fortunate, this is diversity. Some of people, even kids, they come with a little bit thicker, this center of executive center here, and some of them, they come with a low. I don't know if you have heard about that marshmallow test that it was in Stanford, made, and from really people from very, good educated professors. So most of them, kids from them, they were asking, do you want now one marshmallow to kids 5 years old, or do you want 2 after 15 minutes? And they did a very long study afterwards. When they were 30, they were testing them. It was interesting that those who have a patient, to wait 15 minutes to get 2 marshmallows, they made much better in life, family life, better careers in academic, and they misused less drugs and alcohol. So that means it tells us research, some of them are advantaged a little bit, but it can be learned. That's a good thing.
Great. So any further questions to Professor Çitaku?
Any other questions to Professor Mano or myself, please? Don't hesitate. You can just turn off. I'll do now. I will turn the telephones on, or you can even do yours. Excuse me, because we didn't want. If I can make it from here, or maybe you might do it yourself. If you didn't turn off, if you didn't unmute it, you can do it yourself, because to some I cannot do it. I can see. But please just feel free to unmute and ask the question, and we would be delighted to answer it if we can, of course, and if we know. Any questions so far?
Oh, I think no further questions.
Seems that they are saturated, Max. Well, thank you very much for your time and for participating.
Thank you for your time. Great call.
Yeah, thank you. And I just want to repeat again, so please do not hesitate. Professor Max, he's a faculty of Academy of Leadership Sciences, Switzerland as well, beside of a lot of jobs that he does, marvelous in oncology over there in Brazil, and myself as well. So we are ready to help wherever it's needed, because we know, just as Max mentioned, unfortunately, every country will get more in crisis as we are, but we don't want to spread fear, Max, absolutely. We can manage that, and leadership emotional intelligence helps us to better manage this crisis, and we are here to help you, to assist you as much as we can. Thank you very much, Max, for your great presentation, and thank you all for participating. All the best to you and your families and the whole world.
All the best. Have a good weekend, and thanks a lot.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Goodbye. Goodbye all. Goodbye.